Well, hello, that's me again, and we will start with a simple thing. Here's a guy who is extremely popular in the circles of the military professionals all around the world, although I would dare to suggest that he is less relevant today than he was during Napoleon's invasion of Russia, but here it is. The Russian Empire is no country which can be regularly conquered, that is to say, which can be held in possession, at least not by the forces of the present states of Europe, nor by the 500,000 men with which Bonaparte invaded the country. Such a country can only be subdued by its own weakness and by the effects of internal dissension. In order to strike these vulnerable points in its political existence, the country must be agitated to its very center. Karl von Clausewitz, Vom Kriege, On War, Book 8, Chapter 9. So, of course, even here, Clausewitz kind of gives a little bit underestimation with the number of the troops Napoleon invaded Russia with in 1812, because actually the number was much higher. It's different historians give it somewhere between 625,000 to 750,000. It was called Grande Armée for a reason. It was the largest army in the history at that point of time. Well, not the first time Russians have to face that kind of thing. Remember, 22nd June 1941, we have 4.5 million people of Axis forces just invading Russia, Soviet Union. So, as you can see yourself, the principle is always the same. You cannot defeat Russia on the battlefield. You just can't. No matter what you do with your troops, everything, you're going to be destroyed. But obviously the only way to do is to destabilize the core, the center. And you might remember actually that what Napoleon was saying, those who really read up a little bit on the Russian history, that Napoleon stated that, well, I will take Kiev, I will strike Russia at her legs. When I take St. Petersburg, I will strike Russia at her head. When I take Moscow, I will strike Russia at her heart. Well, he obviously miscalculated, but still that kind of gives you a little bit idea of how the whole thing is looking for many Western observers of Russia. And I am on record. Practically, there is no serious Russian scholars in the West today. None, almost. Well, almost. I don't know how many people. I probably can count them on fingers of one hand. But point is that speaking about this mutiny with Prigozhin, we need to understand that what happened in the last few days is outstanding demonstration, actually not of the weakness of Putin's regime, as many would say, but actually of its strengths, because first, there are all records, or I mean signs right now, which indicate that FSB was on it from the get-go. Of course, there are some people which, in the top political echelon, which will be kind of observed and questioned by these respective organs, such as the Investigative Committee and obviously Federal Security Service, which is FSB. And here we have to come to the interesting thing. For example, Mr. Surkov, Vladislav Surkov, who, unlike many self-proclaimed advisors of Vladimir Putin and, you know, those politologists, Vladislav Surkov was actually a real aide, and he was the big honcho in Putin's administration for many years. He gave the interview today to one of the Russian politologists, and it's been now spread all over the number of media. And he, when responding to the issue of what had happened in Russia in the last few days, he stated, well, here's the story I want to tell you. 1980, Leningrad, one of the women just calmly alone going along the street in Leningrad. Then suddenly she is assaulted by several people. People grab her from the behind and begin to choke her. She has all jewelry taken from her, everything, money, cash, what have you. And she even had her boots taken from her. Well, the guy in 1980 who was choking from the behind and beating her, his name was Yevgeny Prigozhin. And this is everything you need to know about the leader of the Wagner group. So there you go. For any cultured or decent human being, everything is what is needed to be known is known from this episode. And that is why Mr. Prigozhin twice went to the prison. And here comes this other issue when we talk about this story by Vladislav Surkov. It's not even Prigozhin who matters. It is the issue of who in Moscow was one of his, well, let's say bosses. Well, we know number of the people already by this moment at time when I'm speaking to you, and we know that there are issues with the organizational structure of Wagner, which operated as the organized criminal group. And actually, it was also Makhnovshina, which is called, you can look up what this term Makhnovshina and who was the father Makhno. But the point is that actually Prigozhin, being a narcissist, psychotic criminal in the past, he, with the help of people who actually controlled him emotionally, and this is the council of the commanders of Wagner, made out of professional officers, they controlled him. They actually drove him essentially, because the guy obviously he has zero military background. He was good at all kinds of the 1990s Russia business practices, so to speak. And everybody knows now those people. This is Mr. Utkin, Mr. Troshev, and all those people from the former Russian military organizations, including the special forces. And there are some interesting facts which I do not want to go in right now. My sources and my friends tell me that, yeah, there was a very interesting kind of body moves on part of those people from the council of the commanders who definitely had their own plans. And Prigozhin was, in many respects, despite the fact that he definitely ran business-wise this criminal organization, because the top of the Wagner is nothing more than organized crime group, and the facts of the actually murdering and torturing people are becoming now increasingly available. So we have a lot of kind of things to deal with. But when speaking about it, how this could have happened, well, let me put it this way. Prigozhin definitely, and his psychotic character, narcissism, played a huge role in all that. Now let FSB deal with those people who, including from this council of the commanders, how it all came to that. But I will start with the good news. And there are some good news, believe me, apart from the fact that the so-called mutiny was effectively suppressed and disorganized very fast, within one day. And that tells you actually that many people did expect it happening. And we may yet learn the whole story. But let's start with this thing. And what are the good news? Well, the good news that Mr. Lavrov, the Minister of the Foreign Affairs of Russian Federation, speaking today to a number of the outlets, well, basically statement of the Minister of the Foreign Affairs, then disseminated by the media all over the place, as it is traditionally done the same but in the United States. And here Lavrov talks about official position of the United States due to the attempt of the mutiny. And here he says, oh, by the way, yesterday the ambassador of the United States, Lynn Tracy, she was communicating with the Russian representatives, and she was transferring signals. Signals those were not really secret, and they were first and foremost about that the United States has nothing to do with this, that the United States are very hopeful that the nuclear weapons will be in good order and that American diplomats will not suffer, Lavrov stated. So their official position of Washington was, guys, we have nothing to do with this, and please don't, and fact is, yeah, they wanted it to actually resolve without bloodbath. And this is very important. Because FSB, and this is in the news today, is also checking the issue of the Prigozhin and Wagner having connections through their bosses, probably in Moscow, with the foreign intelligence services. We know now that official Washington talks about it, that, hey, we have nothing to do with this. And I'm talking, stressing, official Washington. You might remember 2008 and crazy idiot Saakashvili. Condoleezza Rice was on record that, no, I was telling him not to do stupid things. But do not forget, that was the year of the election, and Mr. McCain was one of the guys who was running. Guess what? There was a definite issue of Mr. McCain involved into the prodding this imbecile Saakashvili in committing basically a suicide for Georgia, not the state, but country of Georgia, and then having its ass, handed to it by Russian army. So when official Washington says that we had nothing to do with this, it means probably they are telling the truth. But in the same time, considering that the United States is not really governable, and there are many people of their own volition doing things such as from a neocon cabal, so you might expect that somebody probably was involved. But at this stage, while FSB is checking their connection to the foreign intelligence services, Mr. Vucic, the president of Serbia, goes on record and he states that, what? Well, there was a foreign involvement, I know about it, but, he didn't provide any proof. He's not supposed to. And as already, when the picture begins to kind of shape itself a little bit, could it have been this little island which thinks that it's great? Oh, absolutely. I'm not going to say that it is absolutely hard, 100% case. No, by no means. It's possible. It is actually very highly probable. But let the routine, so to speak, and the process take its pace and place, and people in Moscow, real Russian government, is dealing with this issue. And that brings us to other thing, of course. We have their, they wouldn't be New York Times if they wouldn't come up with this garbage. US suspected Prigozhin was preparing to take military action against Russia. The information was considered both solid and alarming because of the possibility that a major nuclear armed rival of the United States could descend into chaos. Actually, the fears of the descending into the chaos are correct. I mean, they do exist there. They absolutely, reasonable. Same would be true for Russia if, God forbid, the United States goes completely bananas. Obviously, Russians would worry that the nuclear superpower goes into the complete chaos. And this is totally reasonable. But of course, did they know? Well, many people, obviously, I would assume, in the intelligence community in the United States, especially those people who have some clue about military realities and political power in Russia, they probably have been alarmed and kind of taken aback by the Prigozhin's rhetoric, which was completely unhinged. And that's the whole issue of what FSB and SK in Russia dealing with right now. Who were those people who actually were still tolerating it when it should have been stopped? And again, when speaking about Prigozhin and what Wagner committed, you have to remember that in the end, the core issue of this less than 24-hour mutiny is this. And this is absolutely correct about the cultural milieu in the West. And this is the thing which you begin to laugh, really. Here it is. Oh my God, poor dears from CNN and those people, those experts and the cabal they represent. Is US expected a lot more bloodshed in Russia, official says. And oh, poor dears, such a letdown. Nobody created any bloodbath, and it resolved itself really peacefully without the damage to special military operation or any other organs of the government control in Russia. In fact, it's this, it's only solidified Vladimir Putin and his policies support base, which is overwhelming majority of Russian population. But this is a very remarkable headline. They wanted more bloodshed because, as you already read and about Mr. Clausewitz, you cannot defeat Russia militarily. All combined so-called might of NATO cannot do that, believe me. And when you have these headlines, and there are a number of them, is you begin to understand what a letdown and frustration is there on the part of those people who probably have been involved to some degree with this issue. And to just show you who could that be, here it is. Oh yeah, blinking on Russia crisis. We haven't seen the last act. We are watching it very closely. Sure. But it will be increasingly difficult for them to watch because obviously the work which is happening right now in Russia, especially dealing with the fifth and sixth columns, is accelerating. And I speak to you and many people who have been essentially either willing or in the dark, so to speak, assets of their not necessarily just intelligence services, but all those NGOs which are essentially fronts. So they will be removed. Some of them will probably go to, those places, which are called prisons. Others will go and just, lose their careers and they will be removed from any kind of the government service. And that is a very interesting story because when you consider the fact that up to very many thousands of many bureaucrats, they started to run out of Russia the moment things started to go haywire for Prigozhin and his cabal, and make your own conclusions. There is, of course, the joke in Russia right now about those idiots buying their tickets, for example, to Georgia, 10 times the price. And yeah, you cannot return those tickets now anyway. So, because they are back to normal price, which is 10 times less. So, and this is just to demonstrate to you the interesting dynamics of what is happening. But we cannot also forget that special military operation continues, and to understand to give some impression of to people of how it is being presented in combined West. Here it is. This is 90% of the Western experts. Actually, it's about the same share of the Russian experts, quote unquote. And as you can see yourself, these are the guys who have been informing Western audience about the mutiny by Wagner. So you see yourself that they have a very decent backgrounds, and they obviously know what they are talking about. So it's a small joke to kind of put things into a slightly lighter mode, and it's actually all jokes now. This is primarily 90% of all those experts of everything, which you can find on the YouTube and social media. And that's what they are. But reality, of course, is this. This is for yesterday. As you can see yourself, for the 25th, the aggregate KIAs of the armed forces of Ukraine, who actually reacted, of course, to the mutiny by Prigozhin, is 18,515 killed. And this is just killed. And this is the result of this counter-offensive, which is, of course, again, it's a misnomer for the actually offensive actions by the armed forces of Ukraine, and the slaughter continues without any letting up. And here it is. This is one of the things which many in the West cannot take. They really have to cope, and this is like yet another issue of the best tanks in the world. These are Leopard 2s. As you can see yourself, they continue to burn in the good industrial quantities in Russia, and evidently Russians have no problem blowing those up and, just burning them. And as you can see yourself, they try to go somewhere, and guess what? Bang! Whatever their offensive actions they try to do, they are killed, either by Russian aviation or by good old cornets and Russian artillery with Krasnopol smart munitions. So there is no chance. And as today, this morning, I believe the latest data on Bradleys was more than 15% of Bradleys have been completely annihilated. And so, yeah, let them go and, attack. We'll see what happens. Of course, we still have a lot of rumors, unsubstantiated rumors, actually, floating around about this whole situation with this offensive actions by armed forces of Ukraine during Prigozhin's mutiny, which are connected, actually. So, but, yeah, they all have been repulsed, all of them, with, considerable losses for the armed forces of Ukraine, and they will continue to do that. And they will continue to actually try to assault maybe again the Zaporozhye nuclear plant. This is how desperate they are, and this is how desperate their bosses are, and this is how the signs are there, how incompetent they are in any military sense. The guys do not understand what modern war is, and the only thing they know, the only thing they can do are those cliches, tactical and operation cliches. Let's throw more people. And even if you consider the fact that, for example, of course, United States and Great Britain don't give a damn about how many Ukrainians will be killed during this. Actually, as you saw yourself, they hoped for Russian civil war, and to a destabilization of the Russian core, so to speak. You begin to understand that, no, it's not only that. Obviously, they want to fight to the last Ukrainian. It's the fact that they are not good militarily. They suck as military leaders, let alone military planners. And I again want to quote my good friend, he's a colonel, retired colonel of the central apparatus of the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation. He's clear, I quote, they will not outthink us. This is not to mention the fact that actually he also on the record a year ago, we don't even sweat about European NATO. So make your own conclusions and you can see yourself what is happening. And of course, this is completely intricately tied to the Mr. Biden's administration and his election aspirations for 2024, because they need to deliver some kind of the foreign policy success. But what they are getting here, Afghanistan 2.0, and we're talking about times 10 or maybe times 100, because that leads to the strategic defeat of the combined West. Actually, combined West is already strategically defeated. It's just the matter of how the basically things will be arranged after it's all over and done with. And so when we go further, we can see ourselves that Mr. Lavrov actually answered, this is in Russian, and he was talking to the first Channel 1 program, which is called Moscow, Kremlin, Putin, on the 25th of June 2023. This is his response in Russian, but I will give you the thank God for my guys who go to my blog and they post it, and they already translated it. And here is the translation of Mr. Lavrov regarding the issue of the use of Russian nuclear weapons, which is being promoted by people which are crazies from the neocon cabal and Biden administration, and it is also spread by bunch of the fifth columnists, which, by the way, RT loves to give the actually the tribune for them, like those Valdai boys or some shysters like Mr. Karaganov. But look at this. Here is the question. President Biden said that the threat of Russian use of nuclear weapons is real. How do you rate it? And Mr. Lavrov answers, Foreign Minister Lavrov, it is difficult for me to comment on what US President Biden has been saying lately, as well as other reviewers wondering how to interpret this. Now I could not attach too much importance to verbal escapades that do not have any foundation. Now, the next question. Vladimir Zelensky announced that if Russian President Vladimir Putin uses nuclear weapons in Ukraine, the world will find a way to eliminate them. Lavrov, this is an even more turbulent stream of consciousness. I cannot comment on these things. I have no medical education. Von der Leyen has it. And so that's pretty much your answers. And guess what? The fifth column, and which is given the Tribune on RT, on some Russian media, like, as I already stated, Valdai people, all those politologists, political scientists, one of them, Mr. Karaganov, they suddenly talk about that. Yeah, Russia, Mr. Karaganov wrote the absolutely ridiculous piece of crap. He said, we have to, use nuclear weapons first. And now everybody discusses it, all this bombard, so to speak, of people without education, uncultured and stupid. And it is done definitely on purpose, counter to Mr. Lavrov's statement that why Russia would use nuclear weapons when she deals conventionally extremely successfully with what everything NATO is capable to throw at it. And if NATO decides to commit suicide, there is about 500,000 troops which are fully mobilized and now finishing their training and establishing combat cohesion of their units. So the question is, who needs it? Well, there you go. Some of them, they couldn't, restrain themselves. And as I already stated, you have to look very attentively who and how present some cases. But I'm already on record. If you have degree in or in the political science, be that in the United States or in Russia, most of the time it disqualifies you from speaking on any issue pertaining to armed forces, strategies, and especially nuclear weapons, especially because those people never knew what nuclear weapons are. They don't understand how they operate, not in terms of the pop science, presentations of how you explode nuclear bomb, no, on how you use them, which is the strategic and operational issue, and even tactically it is extremely difficult. And because it requires a lot of engineering expertise, military engineering expertise, which is covered by the classification form 1A, and they have no idea what it is. I do. I have a degree in that. So, and that's why when I listen to this, those shysters, all of them, Mr. Trenin, Mr. Karaganov, Mr. whatever, those Valdai people, they trying to pretend that they know what they're talking about. They don't, and they do not represent position of Kremlin, Russian government, and position of the armed forces of Russian Federation. They are shysters, fraudsters. So, and here it is what I wanted to talk to you about today, and we might expect much more interesting information popping up here and there regarding Mr. Prigozhin. I don't think so he has much life left, because he murdered and tortured too many people in Wagner guys who have some scores to settle with him, and other people who have been running this org. What will be the fate of Wagner? I don't know, most likely dismantled. And not most likely, it's probably is being in the progress as I speak to you guys. So, and this is my talk to you today, and obviously it's not even all of it. It's just minute portion of it, because obviously there's much more to process in coming days, and I will try to do it for you. And also, don't take me completely, I'm doing this in good faith, but again, keep in mind, I don't have all facts. Nobody will tell me those facts, because most of what is happening right now in Moscow is covered by all those procedural classifications, secrets, so to speak, and I obviously have no access to it, but we will have to follow the Russian mass media and see what's gonna come out of it. It will be interesting. So, and as always, guys, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel. And those who like what I do and can afford it, please support me on the Patreon or buy me a coffee and two. I would really appreciate this, because this is what allows me to do what I'm doing. So, guys, have the nice week ahead of you. Happy Monday, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.